Nobody, I say this in front of students, knows an organization like an internal auditor.
Hey, have you ever been to a conference and at some point you're like, I didn't really get anything out of that, or I don't have anything practical, tactical to take back and do? That's why we started the Audit Analytics and AI conference, because I can empathize. I did the same thing. That's cool. Can you show me how to do it? And so as part of the Analytics and AI conference, especially the spring conference that we have on May 20th this year from 9 to 4 Central, it's 9 to 4 Chicago time, we have 6 presenters. You can get 7 CPEs, and it's some of the best presenters that we've had over the 5 years that we've been doing this conference. So these are the ones that I've seen personally, 3 of which for sure I have gone back and watched their recordings, months later to go, I know they did this thing that was really cool. Let me go back and watch it so I can do it too. So there's no way that you won't have something you can actually do relative to analytics and or AI. So some of the fine folks we have coming back: Brittany McKinley, Brian McNally, and Val Zappia from Elevations Credit Union, Macy's, and Victoria's Secret, respectively. All 3 of those, I've gone back and watched their sessions from the prior years to see what they did so I could replicate it on my end. And then we have Paul Kirstein and Madeline Novelli from Vulcan Materials, and they're going to show you how to use AI to build a central hub of audit intelligence paired with a library of reusable AI prompts. So any auditor on the team can use analytics. We also have multiple people from the Williams Energy audit team. So they have a framework of using AI to do analytics, but then each one prefers different tools. So one person's like, I like Python, so they do theirs in Python. One likes R, they do it in R. One likes Power BI, they do it in Power BI. They also use Databricks, and so there's some functionality they do in Databricks for SQL or even Python in there if they wanted to. So it's one framework that gets applied and everyone kind of interprets it and uses it differently. It's fantastic. And then the last of our speaker slots, so we have 5. The last one we are having to keep a secret for now and hope to be able to tell you as soon as possible what that's going to be. But I think we can at least say it's going to be very innovative. All right, like I said, it is May 20th, 9 o'clock till 4 o'clock Central. You can search Audit Analytics Conference. It should be towards the top. If not the top, you can go to the auditanalyticsconference.com. Links are in the show notes. You can go to my page on LinkedIn, Trent Russell, find me. There's links there. If you follow me, it's pretty hard to miss some of the posts that we're going to be putting up for the conference this year. So this is probably the most excited I've been about this conference since the very first one that we did. All right, hope to see you guys there. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Audit Podcast. I'm your host, Trent Russell. Today on the show, we have President and CEO of the IIA, Anthony Pugliese. I think most of us probably know Anthony as President and CEO of the IIA. And so a lot of the context that we see him through and get to hear from him is through audit-related activities, IIA-related activities. And so we often ask some kind of, what's in your browsing history, or a favorite prompt for personal use or something like that. And so we did that with Anthony just to, again, try to get an understanding of who Anthony is beyond what we all see, and dive into that a little bit to kick the show off. And then Anthony's 5-year anniversary as a president and CEO of the IIA is in March, which we should have already published this one by then or during that time. And so we just kind of have him walk us through the last 5 years, kind of the highlight reel of what's been going on, things that Anthony and his team have accomplished. And then there's so Anthony mentions the Pulse survey, but then there's also the 2026 Risk in Focus survey, as well as the AuditBoard report that they did in conjunction with the IIA on AI fraud. So we can link to those, but then also we ask Anthony, give us a couple of takeaways from those. What are the 1 or 2 things that we should keep an eye out on, start to look for the trends in those as well. One of the main reasons I had Anthony on was talk about the Global Audit Committee Center. When I saw this announcement, I thought that's fantastic. Let's try to get as many people aware of this as possible. So if you're not familiar with it, keep listening, because Anthony talks about it, what it is, who should join, benefits, value add, how does it work, all that kind of good stuff. And if you're thinking Global Audit Committee Center, maybe I can't participate that in some degree. If you listen to Anthony's answer to our questions, you'll realize that all are applicable. Similarly for VisionU, so those aren't familiar with VisionU, I will speak to this one a little bit. It's for new and aspiring CAEs, and it is very much a legit program. And so I got familiar with it, I think in the past year or 2 years. So I just want to have Anthony speak to that a little bit, promote it a little bit more. I think having more and better, maybe for lack of better words, better CAEs is what's going to help drive the profession forward, help change the perception, which is another thing Anthony talks about. So really looking forward to more people participating in that. And then we kind of close on what the next few years are going to look like. So we start with highlight reel from the past 5. What are the next 5 going to be? What can we look forward to there? And then a question that we often ask guests, and this is the one we close on, is Anthony, if you could grab every auditor in the world by the shoulders and tell them to do just this one thing, what would that be? So stick around for Anthony's answer to that. With that said, here we go. What's in your internet browsing history? We all know you as the IIA President and CEO, but I'm assuming you have a life outside of that. What else is going on in your world?
Yeah, it's a big part of my life, but I guess if I were to think what's in my internet browsing history that I'm gonna share, there's
Mhm.
an awful lot on travel. And it's not just because I'm trying to get an airline ticket or something. I get genuinely very interested in where I'm going. Like I was recently in Cape Town, and that's the beautiful city. It's one you hear about your whole life, like it's such a beautiful spot, and it was. But I don't really know what to go see, so I needed to research well beyond the work that was part of it. I'll be in New Zealand later this year, and that's kind of a bucket list place for me. There's a big national conference being held there, so I've been looking at that one. Like, what am I going to do on the day or 2 that I have to myself? But there's a lot of that. I have 2 twin daughters. They're 15, so I know you have kids. There's a lot on like, what am I supposed to do in this situation, or when should they start dating, and how should driving begin? Um, how much your allowance is now? Because $10 doesn't seem to go a long way. But a lot of that, maybe a little more personal. One of my strange hobbies. I'm a big movie buff, and it crosses every genre, and sometimes I find myself going down that rabbit hole of looking at movies and then researching them and figuring out which ones won an award. It runs the gamut from silent films all the way to current, and I can go horror, sci-fi, drama, you name it, and it's fun for me. And I'm also somewhat of a history buff, so that can correlate a little bit to the travel comment I made earlier. And I guess the last one, just to show I'm not only internal audit, is, as a kid, I guess I was a big comic book collector, and it was more DC than Marvel. I always get that question, so I actually find myself peeking at stuff on that because there's so much attention that wasn't there when I was a kid to that topic. It's like if that had been around as a kid, I'd probably even still be a big collector. But anyway, that's some of the stuff that's sitting in my browser history, and then the rest is probably internal audit stuff.
The Marvel like Wikipedia page, I
Yeah.
took some deep dives on that when it first came out because I didn't read comics, but like there was the X-Men cartoon and the Spider-Man cartoon, and those were Saturday mornings. Like that was must watch TV for me.
Oh,
And
yeah.
when I found like, and I realized like they would even show like family trees of like which ones were related to all of them, and so I've taken that dive
It's
too.
fun.
The
And I did the Saturday morning thing as a kid too, but I can promise they were probably different. There was Shazam, there was The Incredible
Yeah.
Hulk was a Friday night, actually. Those kinda shows, watching them now, my kids think, "Those are the worst special effects I've ever seen." I'm like, "But when I was a kid, that was really cool." That's
Yeah,
more of a YouTube, binge, I think, when I start looking at those.
yeah, the Incredible Hulk ones were awful.
I know, and you look
Was
at the ones now, they're just 100 times better. But
That was what, Luke
Lou
Ferrigno, was that his
Ferrigno
name?
and yeah,
Yeah,
and what was the guy? Bill
nice.
Bixby was the David Banner guy.
Okay. The, yeah, the kid advice thing has been pretty interesting to look that up. I mean, even I kinda smiled when he said that because my kid got in trouble at school the other day, and it wasn't anything terrible, but it was, like, the first one where the teacher was like, "We're super surprised. We didn't expect this out of him." And so, yeah, I had to do a little, because immediately, like, you're just mad, like
What's wrong? What's
It's
wrong?
not how we
What have I
raised
done
you.
wrong?
Yeah. And so, yeah, ChatGPT specifically talked me off a ledge,
Oh, yeah.
and kind of told me how to handle the situation.
With kids, you have I have a tendency of, like, it snowballs, like, it could be something as they refuse to do their chores, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, how are they ever gonna hold down a job? How's that ever gonna work?" And then you're looking, they're like, that is the most common thing is to nag teenagers about chores, and ChatGPT
Uh-huh.
actually gave me an explanation of the development of the brain and why that happens. I'm like, "That's great." I feel much
Okay.
better now.
Okay. Yeah. We still cannot get him to remember to feed his fish every night, but you're saying that's okay. He's 7, and the fact he's not consistently feeding his
I
fish,
think
he's probably gonna be all right.
the teenage years are gonna be harder, but the chores get more
Okay.
complicated, do the dishes, do your own laundry, stuff like that. You go in, you see all the whites mixed with all the colored clothes, and it's on hot, and you're like, "Oh, no. I told you not to do that." But yeah, it gets a little more complicated as the tasks get more complicated, but it's completely normal. Even, like,
All
every
right.
day reminding them is normal.
Parenting advice for all those in the audience listening right now. Yeah. Never really know what's gonna come up in these things. So, all right. Well, I appreciate that, Anthony. Get a little peek about what you do in your off time. Um, Realizing, I think we're going to be publishing. So this is February for those that care, and I think we're publishing yours in March, which is going to be, is that 5 years for you?
5 years of I was hired in December of 20, started March 5th, 6th of 21. So, yeah, 5 years.
5 years in. What's the highlight reel over the 5 year? Also,
Oh,
congrats.
thank you.
By the way.
I mean, truly has flown by. It's hard to even think it's been 5 years. Uh, the old adage when you're having fun, which is really true. I think, if I
Yeah.
look back on 5 years, if in literally no particular order, I think, the launch of the new standards was monumental, and it was a big chunk of that time, and I felt like with my involvement in standard setting in the past with other organizations to totally start over and rewrite them and to get that done with 100 and at the time 115 countries weighing in on it, getting it done in less than 3 years was extraordinary speed. Given it wasn't just updating or an edit, it was a rewrite. But the standards were a big deal. I think the Vision 2035 research was a big chunk of time. We took time to do it. We wanted to make sure we had the right composition of responses, including non-internal auditors, students, academics, legislators in some cases, and regulators. But that was really helpful, and it came with a lot of revelations that we found very important, like how many second line functions are reporting into internal audit now. Um, we've invested a lot. I was mentioning to you before we started the discussion here, growing our network to include more countries is a process. It takes time because we want to make sure it can be self-sustaining, but also that it's got the right resources to support members. And we always strive to make sure, whether you're a member in Pakistan or a member in the US, you're getting at least an equivalent level of service from IIA. And sometimes there's assistance we provide. Sometimes they're ready to go without us, and we just have to make sure the governance is okay. But that was a big focus. The North American chapters, making sure that we were doing things differently. We rely on them so much. They do such a good job. We had to make sure we improve what we did. And we've also grown our principal partner network. And that's an important thing to us, not just because of revenue, but because their voices are so loud in the profession, like the KPMGs and the Protivities and AuditBoard, where they are out there and we want to be on the same messaging uh, place with them. And
Mhm.
growing that network has been very invaluable, particularly when we rolled out the standards and things like the challenge exams and so forth. So that's a few of the things I can think of. We revised the CIA exam. We've done a lot of reorganizing of the office here, the headquarters, or if I'm not in the US, I'll call it global. If I'm in the US, I call it our headquarters. But there's been a lot of changes to reflect our strategic plan and making sure that it's aligned in a way that yields results. So, there's been a lot of it's been, less than fun. Some of it's been amazingly fun. And let's see what the next 5+ years will bring.
You mentioned the strategic plan, and I think, and the new standards. I'm going to tie those together because there's the call for strategy within internal audit, which I think is like one of my favorite things that I saw in there. I'm like, yes, we need that. And so being the position you're in the IA and having your hand in the strategy, is there any like high level guidance, advice, just strategy in general, not around strategy that for CAEs or anyone else that's putting together like I have to put together this strategy for our team or like this tech strategy, anything along those lines where you could go, hey, here's focus on this. If you get down into the details, that's great. Come back up and here's where the focus should be. Any just guidance in general you could pass along to them.
It actually is reinforced. What I'll say is reinforced by our Pulse study, which hasn't been released yet. So I'll give you a glimpse into it. And we have found that teams, internal audit teams that align their work to what the board of directors, audit committee, management is worried about, tends to be teams that get more funding, a lot more funding. And it's also intuitively a better way to demonstrate value. You're looking at things that they're worried about. And that hasn't always been the case. We've been, in some cases, very traditional. You would look at internal controls over financial reporting, and that's very important. It will always be probably a part of our profession, what we do. But aligning closer to what boards are worried about is important. And that's some of the reasons, our topical requirements are selected the way they are, like cybersecurity. Every board around the world is worried about that, particularly now with AI. Organizational resilience or behavior, third party risks. The pandemic brought that problem home when you're not ready. But aligning the work an internal audit team does to that is extremely helpful to the team, but also shows value. And it leads to not just perception, but the reality of the importance of internal audit and the way it's changing so much. So we have find with evidence that that tends to get more funding for the team, but also elevates the team and gives us a seat at the table. And the more we do that, the more we'll be asked to do other things. So I find that exciting, and our research, which will be released next month, will share that as well.
Okay.
It's
Next, I was going to ask, I don't want to put your, I don't want to hold you to it, but roughly when people could expect to get that. So we're going to say March
it
ish.
should be it's funny I just asked that. We said we're hopefully by the beginning of the second week of March, and the only reason is we gotta line up, the communications plan, and we wanna showcase it at GAM. So it'll be the first preview there, but that'll be just the audience that's attending. But after GAM, it'll be full throttle through, websites. I'll post it and it'll be available, and we'll make sure we communicate it to everybody. Pulse is North America only, so it's the United States, Canada, and the Caribbean. So we'll have those three where we'll push it the hardest. Our global one is called Risk and Focus, and that one was released already earlier this year. So right after GAM, in this coming month, we'll have it out.
Okay. And like I said, I think we're publishing you post GAM. So it
Should be
should
out, yeah.
be out ish for
Well,
those. Usually, I mean, we try to link to in the show notes. So if it's out before the show comes out, we'll try to put a link in the show notes for
now
that.
that I've
But
just recorded saying
um,
that, I'm gonna make sure it's out for everybody
yeah, now you have
right
to.
after
Yeah.
GAM, yeah. I'm pretty sure it will be, yeah.
Okay. Uh, two other kind of surveys and research that's been done. So one, the 2026 Risk in
Yep.
Focus, and then the joint one you guys did with AuditBoard, the report on AI fraud. Um, any takeaways, high level from those that you could share? Or also, I think the one from AuditBoard is intuitive AI
Yeah.
fraud. I think we all get what that one's about. Maybe start with speaking to what is the risk in focus one for 2026? That's what we were just talking
Yeah,
about.
risk and focus, I mean, we ask 120 countries around the world. We always get thousands and thousands of responses, which gives us a lot of credibility to the report. But generally, in both of those reports, actually, we found that cybersecurity risks related to AI is top of the list. And it creates a lot of opportunity for internal audit as much as it does risk for organizations. But that's a big one. But if I turn to just risk and focus, I think the biggest finding in that, and there were a lot, the one that stood out to me was the fact that geopolitical risk, which is not a far fetched notion, has come way up on the list. It's now in the top 5, and it was one in the past where we saw, in the top 20, maybe toward the bottom. And obviously with what's happening, whether we're talking, tariffs or other supply chain issues that are being disrupted or other issues that are being created from a myriad of governments, not picking on anyone in particular, but geopolitical risk is very important right now, and internal audit's being asked to pay more attention to that and do scenario planning around it. And what if this, then what are we going to do? So that one was a big one. It jumped 20% in 1 year. So that's a huge leap, coming right after cyber and some like disruptive technology, it's right up there. So that was a big one, and I think if I were to look at the one that we did with AuditBoard, it was really that, you know, 85%, I think it's 84, 85% of everyone surveyed saw AI and fraud being extremely high risk. 85% of everyone surveyed, and nobody said it was low. Then you got people that were more like it's less of a concern than the ones that said high. But correlate that to the fact that less than 40% of those same people felt prepared to do anything about it. And these are our own members, our internal auditors. So everyone saw the risk, which is important. We could be dealing with a situation where they didn't see it as a big deal, and it certainly is, but less than half of that number feel ready to do much about it. So we've got to address that through training, and whether it's our training or someone else's, our members just have to get more up to speed on AI risk and fraud and any of the other issues that come with that. So those are the two, I think, the biggest takeaways for me as I look through all that data. I get to see the raw data. So sometimes it's just like, like volumes, and we synthesize it into something more manageable. But those who come to top. And one of the other things in the audit board report that we did jointly is the need for a lot stronger collaboration on things like cyber and AI, and that no one team really owns it anymore. We can't say it's internal audit or it's just risk or it's just a compliance team. If you're in Europe, it's a compliance issue as much as anything else. But really, it's the need for internal audit to lead all the teams collaboratively to start addressing the problem to make sure the organizations are properly prepared for it. So anyway, skill sets, collaboration, all very important, brought to light on that one.
Should we expect anything from the IIA relative to, let's just call it AI literacy and training? Is that on the agenda
Oh,
item?
yeah.
Is there something concrete? Or obviously we're all aware of
Yeah,
it.
we're issuing a new certificate program around AI fluency, and the uniqueness of that is it's hands-on. It's not gonna be the more, abstract training that you and I both have probably been to, like, generically, you learn what a large language model is or something like that, but really, taking things like our AI auditing framework and showing how to use it versus talking to it and giving real world examples. And it ends up with a certificate, the one you can put on your LinkedIn profile or show to your employer. And that's going to be the beginning of a lot. We have found that partnerships are probably the best way to go. We have a lot of members who are very skilled at it, but we also have a lot of organizations that do nothing but AI training. So you're going to see a lot of partnerships in the next few months rolling out to increase our volume of training that we have. Some of it's going to be available for free, some of it's going to be embedded into our conference tracks, and some of it will be instructor led training or group training that we'll do in various cities across the country. And definitely, we need on demand as well. So that's being developed in a way that's useful. It's not just reading script on kind of a
Yeah.
flat file, but really engaging the member. A little bit harder when you're doing it on an online course, but the certificate program is probably the next thing you'll see. In fact, that's imminent. Like in the next few couple weeks, we'll have that out there.
Yeah, that's exciting. I think it's something that people obviously need and are looking for. Because I get that question all the time, like, what training should I take? And I'm just like, pull up the keyboard and start working on it. That's like, start using it and you'll kind of figure it out. And then the other thing is, if you don't know, then ask it whatever question you don't know, and it probably has
Absolutely. And
something pretty solid
parts
for
of the world you're going to need different training. Like Europe has a very comprehensive AI law and EU AI
you. Yeah,
Act. And that's a whole different lens you have to look at things through. I mean, as a consumer, I think that's a great law. As an organization or internal auditor, I know it's a bear to deal with,
yeah.
but that's we'd have to also look at regions. So we're focusing right now on North America because our European national institutes are working on the ones that fit the EU laws.
Something else, and this is what sparked reaching back out that I wanted to have you come talk, because there's so many things that I've learned in the past year that the IA offers, and I didn't know that. The only reason I know is because somebody reached out to me to talk about it, or I just happened to see it on a post or something like that. Um, and so that's what a few of these I want to talk about. One's the Global Audit Committee Center, which is new, right? So just what is it? Who should join? What's the benefit? How does it work? All that kind of good stuff. Like basically tell us why, for lack of better words, why we should care.
When we did the vision research, we found that our biggest, if you want to call it issue, was a lack of perception of what we do. And it's good that it wasn't a bad perception. It was simply a lack of, meaning, what does an internal audit do? An auditor do? People would say, I don't know. Versus, oh, they're this or that. So Audit Committee Center was designed with the intention of providing valuable resources, practical resources to members of audit committees to understand not just how to use internal audit, of course, there's going to be that in it, but how to look at certain risks in a certain way and using things like risk and focus or pulse as the source material, meaning we know what we should prioritize in the audit committee center, and making sure that they know how to look at the risk. And of course, utilize your internal audit team to do this and add more resources to help internal audit do these things. But it's a place for for audit committee members to go to better understand how to do their roles. And it's for beginners and for those that have been in audit committees for a while because the risks are new to them as well. But it's meant for audit committee members, and it's free. It'll be free for the foreseeable future. We may, over time, look at things like conferences. There are a lot of organizations like NACD that does training for first year chairs of a board. That would be a great ultimate goal for that. But right now, we're working very hard on content. And again, it can't be too internal audit or they won't understand it the way we want. But that content has to be culled very carefully. We have to make sure it's matching the risks that we see and just pointing them in the right direction. So we've actually hired two people full time to do nothing but that. And they're reporting into our EVP that's over advocacy because at the end of the day, making our presence known to stakeholders is an advocacy effort. It's making our value known. So that's the purpose of it. We launched it in January in DC. It was a spectacular event. I don't usually say that lightly, meaning we had members of Congress that showed up and talked about the importance of solid governance. And they were two Democrats, two Republicans, and we did not have to script them very heavily at all, meaning, here's what we want you to talk about, and they ran with it. And it was brilliant. And it really, for all of us present, we had a lot of members present as well as our North American board members. It was actually kind of inspirational. That moment of like, we think this is a really good idea. And then after that launch, we're like, this is a good idea. We need to invest more and use it as a resource for our profession to be better known by the people that use us or should be using us the most. So that's the general benefit. It's, in many ways, we probably should have done this decades ago, but no time like the present. So we're going to get going with that. And, you can expect to see cyber materials in it, org resiliency, organizational behavior, third party risk, all the things that we look at, geopolitical uncertainty. How do you look at that? What should you think about? Scenario planning would be the answer to that, et cetera, et cetera. So it's probably one of the biggest things that we've launched. It'll be resource intensive, but I can tell you a lot of people internally and our governance groups are both our global and North American boards are very excited about it. So the objective is to get the message out of what we do and what we can do for audit committees.
That's what I mean. When I saw it, doom scrolling on LinkedIn, I got excited about it and went, okay, yep, and we need to learn more about this. So, it's free. Who is eligible? Do you have to show some kind of proof that you're audit committee, or like, hey, Joe Blow, senior auditor two, if they're interested, yeah, jump on
We
in here. How does that
we
work?
ask people to tell us who they are, but we won't not let you in if you're not a member of an audit committee. It to me, it I mean, most people, by the way, I doom scroll on LinkedIn as well. My kids think I'm the biggest geek for doing that, but I sometimes it's hours. But we won't kick you out or we won't decline membership because you're not actively on an audit committee. We hope board members join. We hope members of senior management of any organization join. Maybe that's a way for them to look more informed when they talk to audit committees and boards. But it's going to be open to anyone, certainly to our own members to get ideas as well. So the more people that are part of it, we think it's better. We get our message out and we get more feedback. So we do like to collect the data who we're talking to, so that we can understand who's visiting and what we need to change or modify or add. But it's open to anybody.
Okay, I like that because I was just think. I mean, there's a lot of CAEs who are also on audit committees or chair audit committees. But then there's others who I feel like this is going to be good insight for them also, and like the relationship they can have with their own audit committee members, and obviously bring those audit committee members into the Global Audit Committee Center. But then if they're also in it, then it helps speak the same language, be on the same page, and just generally, in my opinion, become a better chief audit executive. And if we can
Yeah,
get the
you
more
mentioned
people, like you're saying, then even better.
like a member. Less of a problem in North America and Europe, but parts of the world we actually get a question a lot is, well, what do I tell the audit committee so they'll use me more? So in that practical way, it's sitting right there, or will be sitting right
Nice.
there for them to use as a place for them to start, like to
Okay.
make the point, to argue the point of including them. Another example of getting a seat at the table.
Okay. Similar to the Global Audit Committee Center, VisionU is something that popped up on my radar maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. And then I think it was actually a GAM last year. There was a VisionU thing. And so I saw like everybody happened to be poured out of this room when I was walking by. And I was like, oh, what are you doing? And they told me, I went, oh, and you're in this, and you're in this, and and it was just, a lot of good CAEs or even one is an aspiring CAE. Um, and I went, well, tell me what is it? And then just to know the caliber of people that were coming out of the program made me go, okay, there's something to this. This isn't just like it's like a CAE forum and we all get together and talk, which is fantastic. But it seemed like there was significantly more to it. And a lot of effort from what I could tell goes into, it's not a check the box. Like you have to be relatively committed to it, right?
Do. I mean, it's a 4-day long immersive training. You get 30 something, 30 hours of CPE out of it. But I think what it's for new or aspiring CAEs. That's the target audience, not experienced CAEs. And I smile when you mention it because I always have the opportunity, actually the privilege of talking to these folks on various topics, whether it's what we're doing or what my leadership journey was like or what they could expect when I was a CAE, et cetera. But it's got, interactive case studies. We have leadership, scenario planning. The case studies are actually very powerful, and we try to make them very real time. We bring in a lot of guest speakers to talk about how they manage their career, practically and then technically. There's a lot of networking opportunities as well with the members that are showing up for the training. It's been a very big hit, but one of the things that we do to make it really enjoyable is we keep the audience down to a lower level of number of people, because if it gets too big, you're going to lose that ability to get really interactive. And we bring in literally some of our most experienced members, um, former chairs of the board, former chairs of some of our senior committees like standards board or certifications board, people that know the field, that know the IIA and can speak to all those things. But we involve a lot of our senior staff as well to go through some of the real world examples and to facilitate. And it's fun in the sense that you're watching so many eager people that are really career motivated in internal audit. And they're all ears. They're really there to learn. And the questions are, they really make you pause. You have to be very reflective in answering things like, what did you do on your journey? What was this or what was that like? And where did you fail? What was your biggest failure, your biggest success? And we all agreed when we did that, like, we're going to be honest. Let's be very honest. Let's not make these answers sound like we're sitting in an MBA class, but real world. So it's been a hit. It's somewhat new, but we're seeing more and more demand, and we're constantly looking at ways to improve it. But I do think the trick is the real case studies and the interactive sessions that really, I don't want to say force, but they really push the participant into being engaged with the session versus, sometimes you can be sitting in a room and listening, but not really absorbing. You really have to with this. And I think that's the secret to the success we've had with it.
I think it was the case study or something along those lines that one of them shared with me to get my thoughts, and that's where I went, "Whew, yeah, this is good. This isn't just your kind of run of the mill, let's all get together and hang out kind of thing." So, um, okay, so we have audit committee members covered, maybe even aspiring audit committee members covered, new or aspiring CAEs. Where can because you said new or aspiring, so my note says old CAE support question mark. So old is a bad way to put it, but like CAEs that have been in it for a while, what resources do you have for those folks?
Biggest two are GAM. GAM is, when we rebranded it to, it used to be General Audit Management, and then now it's Great Audit Minds. It was meant for it's really meant for experienced practitioners, people that have a baseline of knowledge. Like, we're not there to teach. Well, we did in the last couple of years because the standards were new, but they're not there to learn the basics. They're learned to more, as we go more advanced in the concepts in the classes. So it really is designed for people with experience. Not that if you don't have a lot, you won't get a lot out of it, but we design it with that in mind. And our international conference is exactly the same. We just bring some of the same topics, but we add a lot more to it because it's a longer venue than GAM. in a much bigger venue as well. We typically see 3 to 4,000 people show up for our international conference, but those are our two big ones. And another thing that we're doing now is we're putting our courses and all of our competency and learning tools into beginner, intermediate, advanced levels so that people know if they take this course, it's designed for them at the level they're at versus a one size fits all, which, can be frustrating unless it's a brand new topic and no one knows about it. Like, some of our AI courses at the very beginning were baseline because it's all that was available. But we try to do a lot more by gearing our courses toward advanced levels for those people.
So we got the 5 year recap. What is the next, call it 3 to 5 years? What can we expect to see? And I'll kind of leave the microphone with you here, and you can kind of take us out on
Take
this
us
one.
out on. Well, I think you're going to hear continuing messaging from the IIA on the focus needing to be on adaptability and agility of internal audit teams. And again, I always say, internal controls over financial reporting is always part of our profession. I know a lot of internal audit teams that don't do it anymore, but that's a decision their organizations have made. But that focus is because of the changing nature of what we're being asked to look at. So you're going to see more on geopolitical risk and cyber and disruptive technology, workforce talent issues. All that's going to be a big focus for us, and that messaging will be consistent. And that's it's important. You're also going to see a lot in beginning of the second quarter of the year, a lot more on enterprise risk management. One of the
Yeah.
surprising things that came out of the Vision 2035 research is I mentioned earlier how many second line functions are reporting into internal audit. That one was particularly interesting to us because we sort of knew fraud and compliance were already doing that. Risk was a bit new and a new trend, and it's growing and it's global. It's not a uniqueness to North America or Europe or it's everywhere. So we need to start preparing members for that. If it's an opportunity or if it's handed to them, is what do they do with it? So developing those tools are very important. We've designated a committee, and that's important in our vernacular. A committee is freestanding, meaning it doesn't go away unless it's been purposely dissolved. Like task forces and so forth have finite lives, but this committee is, I consider, a bit of a powerhouse. We've got some of the best minds in the profession that do this. Internal audit with risk reporting to them. So you're going to hear a lot about that coming out of the IIA. Again, I'm really excited about it. And, just answering this top of mind, I always say to you, I'm going to remember what I should have said when I get off this call. But I think focusing on the talent pipeline and students are a huge part of that. And you've seen some of the changes I hope that we've made. The Academic Alliance program is now up to 150 schools. We added 30 really quickly once we changed how schools could enter. But building that so that we have a really steady workforce ready to do internal audit work is important. But we also need to focus just as much on those that do mid-career changes, like me. I was an external auditor for most of my beginning of my career, 8 years, and then I switched. So that happened very organically and randomly for me, and I think that's generally the story that people say is, "I didn't know that was gonna happen. It happened. It was an opportunity, and I took advantage of it." So we need to find a path for those people, and we're gonna have a lot of resources to do that.
If you could grab every auditor by the shoulders and just shake them and say, "Will you please, all of you, just do this one thing?" What would that be?
Oh, that's easy. Be your own best advocate. Um, I I I sometimes I mentioned earlier, I get that question of like, well, like when we designed the standards, we got a lot of it was healthy pushback, constructive pushback.
Yeah.
I don't get time with my audit committee. Like, so how am I supposed to get them to approve my audit plan? And literally I would ask, did you ask for their time? And I would get more often than you can imagine. Well, no, like they should be asking me. I'm like,
Mm.
well, I mean, if they don't know what you do, you're probably not going to have that opportunity. So sometimes being your own best advocate is extremely important. I don't want to say being our own cheerleader, but in many ways, that's what it's like because we are valuable. And when I go back to that vision research and we see that perception is our biggest problem, but be your own best advocate, be your cheerleader for your team or for yourself. Show what we can do. Nobody, I say this in front of students, knows an organization like an internal auditor. We have such a unique vantage point, even external auditors. They see us once a year as an organization, and they see many, but internal audit sees stem to stern. They know what every management team is like within the organization. They know what leadership's like. They know what culture's like. They know when things are not going right, even if they can't quite pinpoint the reasons. And we have to make sure that's known, and that happening right from the source is probably so important. So I'd probably say, tell everybody what you're doing. Be your advocate, be your own advocate, and that for your team. So that would be the first thing that pops into my mind. I don't know if that's what you were expecting, but I always wonder that, like, get out there and tell people. I mean, the worst you're going to get is a no, and hopefully you don't get that. And then maybe tell them to go, well, go look at the Audit Committee Resource Center, and that'll help, change their opinions as well. But that would be my answer to that.
Hey everyone, thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Audit Podcast. Whatever platform you're listening on right now, I'm sure there's a subscribe button somewhere, so please hit the subscribe button there. If you're listening through iTunes or Spotify, feel free to go give us that 5-star rating. It only took me about 16 seconds to give myself a 5-star review, and it really helps to get future guests to come on the show, so we'd really appreciate that. Lastly, be sure to check out the show notes and follow us on all our social media channels on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and on TikTok. Also, if interested, please sign up for our weekly newsletter from the Audit Podcast. Thank you all. Have a great one.